Mi gente, you already know who it is. It's Danny Limelight. And I need all of you to subscribe to According to Woods podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and all other platforms.
What's good, party people? This is According to Woods, and I have the honor and privilege of talking to one of the cornerstones of Extreme Couture out in Las Vegas. And this Saturday, he will be competing for the very first time at Josh Barnett's Bloodsport 4. He's the one and only Gil Guardado.
What's up?
Gil, what's going on, man?
Oh, just hanging out, man. I'm in the middle of my day right now. I'm hanging out at home before I got to head back to the gym. Figure I'd hang out with you for a little bit.
Well, I appreciate you for doing so, because right now, Bloodsport is my, a lot of people are talking about the Super Bowl, and that's awesome, but like MMA and pro wrestling, that's my deal. And those things converge in Bloodsport. So yes. I couldn't be more thrilled. This is my Christmas. This is my WrestleMania. This is everything to me. And again, one of the, what I consider one of the greatest heavyweights of all time, one of the greatest catch wrestlers to ever cross over to both MMA and pro wrestling, Josh Barnett, is putting on this show. This is the fourth incarnation of his vision, right? And it was previously done by Matt Riddle, who a former UFC alum and now in the WWE. But again, this is where it is. This ass kicking, like fucking balls to the wall. We're gonna kick her ass, take no names, and this is where it goes down.
That's right. Yeah, it's a good time, man. It's a good way to spend a Saturday, getting into a good old-fashioned fist fight.
Hell yes! Hell yes! But obviously, there's been there's a lot of easier ways to make $1 than getting into fisticuffs, right? Mm-hmm. So, how did a young Gil get involved in the wild world of combat sports?
I'm sorry, you're gonna have to repeat that because your mic was cutting out there for a second. I was having
I was saying how did you get involved in combat sports?
How did I get involved in combat sports, man? How much time you got? So long story short, I'll try to make this as short as possible. Not an atypical story. I was a small kid. I was a skinny kid. I got picked on a lot. So I started learning martial arts around the age of 11 or 12, just to know self-defense, just to take care of myself. I didn't start growing and kind of like filling out into the frame I'm at now until I was almost in high school. Before that, I think I topped out at like 5'1" and maybe 125 pounds soaking wet. I'm about 5'11", 180 right now. So big difference, right? But I started just learning it just to know it. I didn't want to get picked on anymore. I got into high school. I wasn't big into sports growing up. That wasn't my thing. I was an art student. I was a gamer. I liked pro wrestling. It wasn't my thing. But martial arts was fun for me. It was just a great way for me to spend my time and be able to learn a skill. When I got into high school, I joined the cross country team. It was just a random thing. My coach saw that I was a good runner. My endurance was great. It's like, hey, you should try out for track. So I went to track. The track coach got me into cross country. And at the cross country practices, I met a few guys who were on the wrestling team. And they're like, oh, if you like martial arts, you should definitely try wrestling, man. And I was like, I don't know. It's a little out of my wheelhouse. I don't want to do anything crazy. They're like, no, it's just you against someone else the same size as you, man. It's great. So I tried it. I went to the first practice. I got my ass handed to me by a guy who's still a really great friend of mine today, my boy Efren Torado. And after that first practice, I was hooked. I went home and I told my dad, I was like, hey, I need to do this. He had been trying to get me to join football for years to try and get me to put on some size. And I told him, no, I don't want to do football. I don't want to be blindsided by guys twice my size. But going one-on-one against a guy my size, that's me. And he thought I was insane for doing it. Second match ever, almost broke my elbow. And my dad thought I was going to quit. And I was like, nope, I'm going to ice up this arm. I'm going to tape it up. I'm back at practice on Monday. I ended up wrestling all through high school. I was captain of my wrestling team in high school by my senior year. And after that, I started wrestling Greco and I started wrestling freestyle. And then, without getting too deep into it, at some point I got into jiu-jitsu. And then jiu-jitsu got me into MMA. I had my first MMA fight in March of 2007. decided that I need to be doing this full time. So about 8 months later, I ended up moving out to Vegas specifically to join Randy Couture's gym, where I'm still at today. And it's been a wild ride since then, man.
My goodness, and that's amazing, right? Because I kind of was in that same aspect where regular sports didn't really attract me as much as like combat sports, right? But I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? It's almost mystical that you're competing for Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, but it was another iconic heavyweight in Randy Couture that essentially ushered your next phase of your combat sports journey.
Man, Randy, like, I haven't told him this, and I still talk to Randy to this day. I'm actually really good friends with his son, Ryan, and I see Randy all the time in the gym, too. But I haven't told Randy this, so maybe he'll see this. But Randy's responsible for a lot of stuff that I got myself into. I was a huge fan of his when I started getting into MMA in about 2003. And it was right around the time that Randy started having that resurgence when he beat Chuck Liddell, he beat Tito Ortiz, he beat Vitor Belfort. And then in 2007, he ended up opening this gym, and I was like, man, I would give anything to be out there. So I moved out here. I came out here and moved in with the only person that I knew in Vegas, who was my cousin. I slept on her living room floor for 6 months while I kind of got my life together out here, all because I wanted to be a part of this gym. And it was kind of the same thing when I first started sports. I came out here and I got my ass handed to me for like the first couple of years that I was here, but I love it, man. And then I actually got my job at Extreme Couture as the strength and conditioning coach. It ultimately because of Randy. We were having a change in management, and the new gym manager, my boy Eric Nixick, he said, "Hey, our old strength and conditioning coach is leaving. We want you to take over the position because we know you're a strength and conditioning coach, personal trainer, you're certified, all that stuff. We want you to step in and fill Jake Bonacci's spot, who's the former strength and conditioning coach at Extreme Couture. Very well-known name in strength conditioning for MMA. And taking over from my boy Jake seemed kind of a big deal because Jake's the man. And I actually told him when they had the meeting with me in the office, I was like, can I have a day to like think about this? Because this is huge. And then I like kicked myself. I was like, what am I doing? This is opportunity of a lifetime. Yes, sign me up. I want to take over. They're like, perfect. You have a strength and conditioning session with Randy Couture Monday at 8 o'clock in the morning. That's your job interview. All right. So I did the session with Randy. Apparently he loved it. He hired me on the spot. We ended up training one-on-one together for several years after that. And then I took over strength and conditioning classes at the gym. I started training a lot more of the fighters. I moved my entire business over there. That was in 2013, and I'm still there to this day.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. I mean, you literally altered the destiny of your life to kind of get the tutelage of the natural Randy Couture, and you become again a centerpiece in the gym because, especially in this day and age, strength and conditioning that is absolutely paramount to any type of. I don't care what it is. It's jiu-jitsu. I don't care catch wrestling. Every format of combat sports they are essentially, heck, even, we've got football players that are training in MMA and getting their strength and conditioning this way versus the kind of augmented way that they used to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I think strength and conditioning in mixed martial arts has been a big missing piece for a long time. Every other sport, every other professional sport has a strength and conditioning component, and they've known for years how to train for that sport, what to do, how many days a week, what intensity, what does the cycling look like, what's the periodization look like. All of that's been done in every other major sport that you watch. And for some reason, mixed martial arts and mixed martial artists thought that they were special and didn't have to do that stuff. But as soon as we wanted to be taken serious as a professional sport, well, now we have to train like professionals. They built that whole UFC Performance Center right up the street from me because they needed a way to teach these guys like, hey, you need to be doing the same stuff every other professional athlete's doing. And now in the last couple of years, it's really started to catch on, which I think is great.
No, 1,000%, 1,000%. Now Don McGuire of the Fighter's Voice, he's like, hey, Gil, did you fight Pete Martin at World Series of Fight 22?
I did. Yeah. Yeah, I've had a couple people like come up to me about that, like, oh, you fought so and so, you fought this guy, you fought that guy, and Like especially the one I get a lot is the only fight of mine that's available in full on YouTube is a fight I did in 2012, 2013 when I fought the Storm and Mormon, Kurt Crum. He's a great dude, by the way. I still talk to that guy every now and then, but me and this guy put on an absolute dogfight. It was 1 round. It was 5 minutes. It ended up being stopped by the doctor in between rounds because I busted up his face pretty good. But man, like that's the one that I definitely get a lot of people like, oh, I seen that fight. You're that dude. Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's, again, as somebody that is, I mean, literally heavily influenced by Randy Couture, right? And there's a lot of, you mentioned his son Ryan, and there's a lot of, current day, notables in MMA, right? But even the strength and conditioning guy is a badass. Like, that's gotta feel pretty cool, right?
I mean, to me, like, I think the people who train in this sport and train other people to do the sport should have some direct knowledge of the sport. Being a strength and conditioning guy and knowing how the body works and how to make it adapt and all that stuff is one thing. You definitely need the book smarts and the knowledge to be able to do the things that I do in the gym. But I've seen a lot of strength and conditioning coaches kind of shoot themselves in the foot because they don't know how intense the training for MMA itself actually is. So they'll go out and just obliterate these guys in strength and conditioning when they've got a sparring session like 5-6 hours later. I've seen it firsthand where guys just can't spar because their lift was just way too intense. Mm-hmm. I think coaches need to have a knowledge of the sport and a knowledge of that fighter's schedule to be able to kind of call an audible and adjust the program on the fly. So that way these guys can get the important work done at the highest intensity possible. And then that strength and conditioning work just kind of helps to fill the gaps.
No, I couldn't agree with you more, and again, it's funny, and this is my kind of love and fascination with all forms of combat sports, is there's no right way to do it, right? There are coaches that, have never fought before, and they just have a vision, right? There are people that are, battle-tested veterans that do it. There are people that have never lifted weights at all, never done any sort of cardio or anything like that. And, they can create champions. But again, you're never going to know what that. You have to be in tune with the athlete, with the person that is before you, right? And formulate a game plan. Again, much like any war-tested general, right? To be in the war room and formalize a game plan that will have this person succeed, right? On all fronts, not just in the fight. That fight means there's a little bit more zeros, next to what they're doing, right? And that means that it's a betterment of their life, So it's huge that you went ahead and did that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. It just kind of all came together at the right time for me. I'm very fortunate to be where I'm at and doing what I'm doing. I definitely, like, not saying I was completely lucky. I worked my ass off to be where I'm at, right? But I had a couple really good opportunities at the right times with the right people that I had to jump all over. I had no other choice. I mean, what other choice was there, right? Randy Couture wants you to be a strength and conditioning coach. What are you going to say? No. Like, I definitely had a couple of great opportunities come along the way. A lot of tough times in between, a lot of challenges, a lot of hard work, a lot of reading, a lot of testing, a lot of education, all that kind of stuff. It paid off, man. I'm happy where I'm at. I've got a really good gig at that gym. That gym is my second family. I've been there for going on 13 years now. I have no plans on leaving anytime soon.
That's amazing. And again, doing what you love and figuring out a way to pay for it, that is a pearl of wisdom that my dad kind of bestowed on me when I was a young lad. And it's something that you are putting into action in real time right now.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And Don McGuire is saying that Pete Martin fight, that he was a photographer there. So he shot that fight.
Really? Huh. How about that?
Small world, right?
Small world, man.
Now, Charles C, and shout out to Charles C from Twitter joining here on Facebook. He said, hey, what was it like training with the man Moxley? And we're talking about the one and only former WWE champion, the former AEW champion, and former of a previous incarnation, Bloodsport 3 headliner, one John Moxley.
You know what, man? Working with Mox is actually really, really, really simple. And that's not to say it's easy. We don't take it easy. We train our asses off. But working with Mox is simple, man. He actually reminds me a lot of Randy. He comes in, asks, what's the game plan for today? We talk about what we're going to do for the session very briefly. And if he has a question or two, it's maybe just about like a technical component. Otherwise, he's like, sounds good. Let's go. And then blinders on, get to work. Randy was the same way. A lot of the pro fighters are the same way. John Moxley's no different, man. He comes in ready to work and he busts his ass. He'll come in sometimes after TV, after he's taken the, fall through a table or he got dropped off the stage or something happened to him. And he'll be coming in like, oh, man, my neck really bugging me today. But all right, I'm ready. What are we doing? He just doesn't care, man. He's just there to work. And I love it.
I absolutely love it. That's incredible. And John McGuire says strength and conditioning. It's more important than people think. There's a lot of coaches that cause more harm than good with a fighter.
100%, man. 100%. We have to understand, any coach has to understand that you're the support staff. The person in front of you, the one getting ready for the fight, is what all this should be centered around. I'm not going to try to obliterate a guy because I need to feed my own ego. My job is to get that dude ready or that girl ready for that fight, however I got to do it. And if I have to adjust the game plan to where we've got to back off a couple steps from day to day, then we're going to do that, because what's more important is that they get in shape and get ready to go in and fight the fight. If I'm contributing to lack of recovery, to injuries, to not getting them what they need out of the fight, and then they end up losing, now they're losing money, they're losing sponsors, they're losing rankings, they're losing all that stuff. I'm not going to be responsible for that. I got to make sure that the person in front of me is the centerpiece to everything that we're doing. I wish every coach would understand that, man, because then there would be a lot more people that would be going into fights in way better shape with way, way fewer injuries.
No, 1,000%, which I got to get to. So you're at Extreme Couture, right? And you're training, right? What was the ethos behind it? Were you training to actively fight and compete, or did you kind of always? You have a strength and conditioning background. Was that kind of in your lexicon of what you wanted to do with the gym? Like, what was the mindset when you first came in?
I mean, originally when I got out of high school and stuff like that, I wasn't doing any of this. I was a wrestler, right? I like to wrestle. I like to compete. I was a tri-sport athlete, varsity, all that stuff. But again, I was an artist. I was a gamer. I was all this stuff. So my whole life growing up, I actually wanted to be an artist. I wanted to be a graphic designer and do video game design and all that kind of stuff. So out of high school, I actually went to the Art Institute in Los Angeles. I got accepted there, and I went to school there for about a semester and a half. Unfortunately, I lost my father around that time, and it really that's a life-changing event, man. So I kind of took stock of everything, and I decided I didn't want to be there. I wasn't happy where I was. I found myself ditching class more and more to either go to the beach, because we were 20 minutes from Santa Monica, or going across the street to where there was a jiu-jitsu studio and just getting mat time in. Like, I found myself leaving school more and more to do the things that I wanted to do. And I said, you know what? I'm done with this place. It didn't work out. That's fine. Let me go back home. Let me readjust. I went back home. I started coaching my brother's high school wrestling team because he was a freshman that year. I started studying for my certification. And then I was competing in wrestling and stuff. And then I started working as a personal trainer. And then I started competing in MMA. And I was like, well, this isn't actually a bad way to go about doing this. I'm in the gym all the time anyway. So now I get to train people. And now I just have to go to my other gym to train for fighting. So my career as a coach and as a fighter have both kind of elevated together until they finally converged on this same path where now I train and coach at the same gym full time. And I couldn't ask for a better situation, man.
That's not a bad fucking deal, my man. I'm just saying. Like, you figured it out. The game of life, checkmate, you won.
Hey, man, it wasn't without struggle. Like, I still get it all the time from people like, oh, what else are you going to do? Like, I did an interview yesterday and I was asked the question along the lines of, after fighting, do you have any plans? What are you going to do? How is your life different when fighting and competing and wrestling is done? To be honest with you, man, I could stop competing today. I could never step foot in a ring again, and the rest of my life would not change. I would still be going to Extreme Couture every day. I would be training and getting better at jiu-jitsu and getting better at Muay Thai and training clients and working with fighters. The only part of my life that would be different is I don't get back in the ring anymore. But after all this is done, man, I'm doing exactly what I want to do, and I'm happy doing it.
But again, it's a virtuous and fulfilling life, and it's one that again, you felt like very strongly, and it's funny because you know who also got accepted to the Art Institute?
Who's that?
This guy.
Seriously?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And I remember going to orientation, and then they were talking about like the what the pay was like, and at the time, like my mom didn't have the greatest credit. She worked at City Hall in Inglewood, right? Like as one of the mayor's assistants, helped them with a re-election campaign and everything. And even she, like as a Fijian immigrant, it wasn't easy. So we were living in a hotel on Century Boulevard. Like for real, that's how I spent my senior year of high school, right? And crazy enough, right? Right after high school, I mean, like from there, I kind of shifted gears. I was already in ROTC in Inglewood at Inglewood High, right? And I was like, oh, I'll go to the Air Force. Took the ASVAB, scored really high, going to the Air Force, and then, oh, well, my dad's a musician, so I might not have the cauliflower ears, but as of 2003, when I went for the orientation and the physical and whatever, I have a 53% hearing loss. Yes, that's right, folks. For those keeping score, I can actually not hear more than I can hear. So, and that was damn near 20 years ago. And I'm a podcaster. But even after that, right, I they disqualified me because of the hearing. So I went to broadcasting school in vain that I was going to follow in line because my mom being from Fiji, her dad was the first broadcaster on the radio, Fijian-born broadcaster, non-BBC. So I was going to take that, right? And didn't do anything with that because, I mean, you were in Southern California in 2003. Well, in 2003 is when I graduated, right? And went to, same, right? And went to broadcasting school, and I would take the bus 4 hours each way from Inglewood to Huntington Beach, right?
Yeah.
Right, Beach and Edinger. And do you remember what happened to the buses in 2003, Gil?
Remind me, because it
the
probably
bus strike.
That's right. You know what? I was going to the Art Institute in late 2003, around the time that happened, and it started affecting my bus route from West Covina to Santa Monica. And that's when I moved into student housing in Santa Monica. Funny enough, you mentioned trying out for the military around all this time too, because I actually took the ASVAB for the Marine Corps around that time. And the only reason that I didn't go is because the woman who eventually became my wife and my mom both begged me not to go. Like literally begged me not to go because it's 2003. Things were crazy around that time. I didn't know what else to do. I just lost my dad. I was out of school. Like I didn't know what else to do. So I took the test and I scored really high, and they were offering me all sorts of jobs and all sorts of money. And my, future wife and my mom were like, please don't do it. Please don't do it. Please don't do it. And, it worked out the way it did. But man, funny enough that you should say all that, dude.
And again, and we grew up like miles from each other, right? Yeah. And it takes me being in Cali, you being in Vegas, and Josh Barnett bringing it all full circle.
Pro wrestling bringing the world together, man.
I'm just saying. Now, in terms of questions, and I definitely want to get your thoughts on it, right? Don McGuire wants to know your thoughts on the harm caused by weight cuts and the massive rehydration on the brain and the body. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I was actually having a short discussion with someone earlier today about the same topic. There's a lot more studies and information coming out that shows how extreme dehydration affects your ability to recover, and also affects your ability to withstand concussive blows to the head. They're starting to do more and more research about this stuff. A lot of it's probably taking place at the UFC Performance Institute, where they're just collecting data from every single fight that they do. The extreme weight cutting thing, man, it stems from wrestling. It's been around forever. It's an ugly side of the sport, but it's something that's just kind of comes with the territory, man. There's no easy solution to it. I don't have one. I'm not smart enough to come up with one. I wish I wish more guys, and this is my own bias, I wish more guys would put more time into developing themselves athletically. Not trying to just get huge and not just trying to look the part and not just trying to do all these different things, but really allow your body to adapt to your own frame and the type of athlete that you are. For some guys, that may put you on the smaller end of the spectrum. And for other guys, you might have to move up a weight class. But I think actually allowing your body to develop into the athletic form that it's supposed to be will allow you to then choose whatever the best weight class is for you. A lot of these guys are just cutting massive weight classes just because someone told them to, or they see another guy on TV like, oh, that guy's about my size, but he's 40 pounds lighter than me. Maybe I should be fighting at the same weight class. I don't think that's a good way to go about it, man. I think guys need to really be smart, talk to a professional, get as much data about your own body as possible, formulate a game plan, and try to make the safest decision that's going to allow you to get the most out of your career, because you only have this short time to be able to do stuff in MMA and wrestling and all this stuff, man. You got to be able to make the most out of it.
No, 100%. And Don McGuire says the hydration in his experience is worse than the cut.
Sometimes I've cut big time for fights myself. Like I said, I walk around close to about 180. I fight at 155 usually. It's not my favorite thing, man. It's just, it's something I have the ability to do. I know my own body. We figured out the weight cut. There was a couple times where the weight cut didn't work out. I missed weight, full disclosure. But I figured out 155 was the right weight class for me if I did it right. So I figured out the right way to do it. But the rehydration is it's the other half of that science, man. Cutting weight is one thing. Being able to rehydrate and go into the fight feeling close to 100%, that's another. And sometimes guys screw that part up, man.
It happens. And again,
happens.
there's not to say that there's no right way to do this, but I mean, the sport is evolving, whether it be professional wrestling. To me, and this is why I'm so hyped for Bloodsport, is because to me, there's so many similarities, so many parallels from pro wrestling and MMA, right? Because essentially the time span to make it, right, and to make big money, right, from beginning to end is hauntingly similar. We got 5 to 7 years, right? Whatever, if you're an indie wrestler, if you're an amateur fighter, all the way until you get to the pinnacles of whatever that sport has for you, you've got 5 to 7 years. And anybody that does it longer than that, good God, that's like, lightning, getting struck by lightning twice. Like, the Undertaker for his size to be doing it, I mean, literally as that character for 30 years. 30 years! It's incredible.
Yeah, man. It's, you're not going to get many of those, even though guys like to hold those dudes up on a pedestal. Guys like Taker, who's been doing it for 30 years. Guys like Jericho, who's been doing it for 30 years. Mm-hmm. Guys like Randy, who did it until he was 48 years old. You're going to look at guys like that and like, oh, if he can do it, I can do it. You know what? Not everyone's built like that, man. Statistically speaking, you're right. You have maybe a 5 to 7 year window where you really get to do this as often as possible and make as much money as possible. And then if you do it well enough and you make enough money and you were smart about it and reinvested that money into better forms of training and better coaches and better nutrition and all that stuff, then maybe you get to extend that window a little bit. But some guys aren't that smart. Some guys spend their money on dumb stuff and don't reinvest it back into themselves. And then they find out real quick that window starts to shrink.
Well, talking about smart enough and not investing well, I mean, the quarantine kind of hit everybody different, but when everybody was talking about PS5s and Xbox Ones, I saw on Facebook Marketplace a sauna for $150. And,
yeah, man.
Well, there we go.
Well, there you go.
Just because. So, and I haven't even taken hits to the head. So, I mean, one would argue that I've been dropped on my head many times when I was a baby, but that's another story for another day. So obviously, and Charcy, I love this. Thanks for the positive attitude. Such a great guy and such an inspiration. Definitely pulling for you and rooting for you this Saturday. Continued success. That's amazing. Thank you, Char, for those well wishes. So Saturday, Bloodsport 4. My goodness, man, I am so psyched. And this is going down again. If you guys don't know, check out Josh Barnett's website. That you'll get all the information. GCW social media page and War Master's own personal social media pages for it. But my goodness, how does Gil Guardado get involved with Bloodsport? Obviously, you are uniquely suited for this arena, right? With the MMA, with the strength and conditioning, with the wrestling pedigree, training none other than a former world champion and a former headliner in Bloodsport 3, John Moxley.
That's right.
How does how do you get approached to step into the ropeless ring of Bloodsport?
I mean, you say it yourself, John Moxley. John and I, we've known each other and we've worked together for a couple of years now. So we talk during our sessions. We talk about family, we talk about friends, and we talk about experiences and stuff like that. Just like any other coach and student would do, you build a relationship with people. And I'm a fan, and I told him as much. So we talk about stuff that he does on AEW, and then every now and then we'll talk about some stuff that we saw in WWE. Even though, to be honest, both of us don't really watch it that much anymore. But I just kind of casually mentioned to him one time, I was like, you know what, man, that's kind of just a bucket list thing for me. I would definitely love to get in there and be able to try this out, just to see. I'm open to new opportunities and new experiences. I'd like to kind of get outside my comfort zone and just try something different. And I don't know what the length of time was between when I said that and when he came back with an offer, but he was like, hey, dude, Josh might have an opportunity for an opening on a show. Are you interested? And I was just like, yeah, absolutely. Just sign me up. Say yes, and then we'll ask questions later, And then Mox said that he texts Josh, who he says doesn't always respond back right away. I don't know how true that is or not. I'm just saying what I heard. But apparently Josh responded back to him within minutes saying he's in, done. And then it was, that was in the last few weeks. And so we just started, all right, let's start training. Let's start getting ready. I was actually recovering from COVID when I got the news. So I was like, okay, let's get back in shape. Let's get these lungs working and let's make this happen.
Man, talk about legends of sport, right? John Moxley and Josh Barnett are talking amongst each other about you to get you on Bloodsport. Could there be a better story?
I don't know. One thing at a time, I guess. This wasn't even on my radar. This was just something that came up, and I said yes to it. So who knows? Maybe this goes well. Who knows? If it doesn't, then great. We did it. We had fun. And again, I just go back to doing what I was doing before. Never say no. Never say never,
Man, that is pro wrestling etiquette 101. Never say never, right?
That's it. Never say never.
So, especially as a consummate mixed martial artist, as a strength and conditioning coach to one of the most elite gyms in the pantheon of MMA history, right? I got to ask you because this is a new arena, right? So, how is the training kind of different, or maybe been the same from other training camps in your previous career?
The training itself is not that much different. To be honest, I mean, it's a similar skill set, right? You got to know how to strike. You got to know how to wrestle. You got to know submissions, offense and defense. So in that regard, I'm doing what I'm always doing, staying in shape, working on my skill set, trying to work on all areas, shore up my weaknesses, apply my strengths, all that good stuff. The only difference is the venue. The arena in the enclosure, or lack of enclosure, I should say, that we're competing in. I'm used to competing in either a cage or a boxing ring. I've competed in both, but there's a barrier there. There's a certain amount of space that you can rely on, and that something's going to stop you if you get too close to that edge. That's not here anymore. There's no ropes. It's a mat, and it's a smaller area that I'm used to competing in. There's no barriers. There's no ropes. The rule set's a little bit different. No judge's decision, right? Knockout or submission only. So we got to be cognizant of that. We're not trying to win on points, man. We're trying to win as violently as possible. So in that regard, that's the way that the training is differing a little bit.
Take that, IBJJF. There you
Yeah.
go. I'm kind of hot because, I was told by Ben Jones of CSW that the IBJJF doesn't regard or honor Eric Paulson's black belt in terms of lineage in competing. I'm like, huh? What's he
Yeah.
even doing?
I've never competed in IBJJF. I've competed in a handful of jiu-jitsu competitions and none of them were IBJJF. So I don't really have an opinion about all that. I've heard some weird stuff about that, but that's not really my
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. I mean, it is what it is. It is what
Yeah.
it is. Now, I gotta ask, right? Because you do have somebody that has been, in the throes of what Bloodsport is, right? That is, in Moxley, right? So, was there any pointers that he gave to you, or is it something that we're gonna have to figure out buying the pay
No,
per view on Saturday?
it's kind of funny. Like as soon as we started getting ready for this, that coach-student relationship started to take a little bit of a turn. Right now, now he's in the position of knowledge and the position of experience now. So I'm trying to pick his brain, and we've gotten some mat time in together. We got some mat time in for the last Bloodsport when he was getting ready for Chris Dickinson. I posted videos about that on my social media, so if you want to go back and find those, they're there. But John and I spend a lot of mat time together. We hold pads. Like I hold pads for him and teach him striking. Now he's just kind of turning around and teaching me the nuances about what go into Bloodsport and the rule set and what I got to look out for. So I'm definitely learning some new stuff along the way from one of the best in the business. So
Oh, I mean, I kind of echo Charcy's sentiment. He's probably the best, like right now.
I
I
mean,
get, yeah, it's
difficult
fair.
to argue. Difficult to
Yeah,
argue.
yeah. Championships don't lie.
They don't.
Which,
You know.
which, I want to ask about the approach because I don't know in terms of your methodology when you're fighting, right, in MMA and other forms of combat sports, but did you do homework on your opponents? Did you watch a lot of tape?
Yeah, I've always made a habit out of studying people that I'm going to go against as much as possible, and it's a habit that we get from Randy. Our kind of work ethic and our gym ethos and just the whole mentality of the gym as a whole was molded around the way that Randy kind of ran his whole career. He was always in great shape. He kept himself healthy between camps. He always studied. He was always trying to find his opponent's weaknesses to be able to pick them apart. We all do the same thing now. So I'm no different. I've always been like that in my career. I want to try to do my homework and study these guys as much as possible. So that way I can apply my strengths to their weaknesses. I'm not trying to attack your strengths. I'm trying to win a fight. I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody. I'm trying to get that winner's check.
Oh man, I love it. I love it. That is absolutely amazing. Which I gotta, I gotta ask in terms of the, not just your opponent's, you know, library of move sets and what have you, right? That's one aspect of it. But you are both a connoisseur of both MMA and pro wrestling, right? So
Yeah.
going into Bloodsport, were there something that maybe as a fan or as a competitor that yourself that you didn't see in some of the people before you in both MMA and pro wrestling that you're kind of looking at with different eyes now that you're competing in the spectrum and looking at and kind of pulling from some of their repertoire?
In a way, I'm kind of, I started studying the blood sport format like in depth and really started taking a deeper look at it when Mox was getting ready for Dickinson. Because I need to get him ready, and I can only get him ready if I know what he's getting ready for. So I really started kind of doing a deep dive into Bloodsport and old school pancrase and all this other stuff. And I have a couple buddies here in town that do pro wrestling. I've got a couple training partners in the past that have done it as well. And they sent me some homework and they sent me some stuff like, hey, make sure you look out for this, make sure you're training for this, make sure you're getting ready for that. They sent me some stuff on Dickinson where we game planned, we broke it down. What does he do? What's he going to look for? And we try to apply as much of that stuff as we can. I didn't get too much into it before I started working with Mox, but now that I'm kind of neck deep in this stuff with him, I definitely keep a closer eye on it, man, because I need to make sure that he's ready. And now, lo and behold, I got to make sure I'm ready.
I love it. I love it. Now, it's kind of funny because this is where our paths kind of once again parallel. Because your opponent of Saturday, right? Juan Diego Perez.
Uh-huh.
He used to train at a place in Pasadena, California called Fight Academy. The last time this guy, before I became the body of a god and that god being Buddha in terms of my body type, Diego Perez was essentially a teammate of mine. So this is fun,
Okay.
right? This is like, again, full circle stuff, right? And I don't have a dog hunt. I wish everyone well. I wish everyone health, because after the tremendous, relentless punishment that you competitors all from top to bottom will do at Bloodsport 4 and again on 5, I pray for all of your good health and the fact that you guys can walk away. But it's just kind of funny that you're facing Diego, because I've interviewed a lot of your teammates. He used to be a teammate of mine, and you guys are competing at literally one of my favorite events of all combat sports, Bloodsport.
All right. Man, funny how that works, huh?
It does, man. And it's weird because the weirdness of the last year, right? And everybody was just like infighting. And for those who have heard this spiel, I apologize. I sound like a broken record, but there was a lot of people fighting amongst each other and blah 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 and whatever. And the thing about it is, here's the thing. Everybody, right? Every political affiliation, religious affiliation, sexual orientation, we're here. All of it. This combat sports community is littered with everyone. Guns, no guns, doesn't matter, right? And we're all here, and we kind of figure it out. And it's funny because when people would kind of go on a triad online and blah 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 and just verbal venom and everything like that, and it's just like, you need more combat sports in your life. You kind of like, right?
Yes, you do. Man, you said it. I've trained with all walks of life and all types just at my gym. You get people with differences of opinion. You get people that will butt heads over a lot of different stuff. And, when you can put all that aside and kind of get on the mat and leave all that on the outside, and it's just you and the other person, life gets a lot simpler then, man. Everything else in your life trying to kind of gets the volume turned down when it comes to combat sports. So.
Yeah, and it's the truth serum, because if you are about devious means, right, just like a horrible demeanor, it's just funny how this works out. It might be mystical, or it might be just how pure all aspects of combat sports are. Where that person, that deity, that promotion, that promoter, that trainer, or whatever, chances are they're not going to be in the community for very long. They kind of weed themselves out, and it just happens.
It just happens. Yep. Some people figure out this is not for them.
100%. Which, obviously, I believe in my earnest belief system that Bloodsport, right, with what Josh Barnett was doing, is going to usher in a new era of how we perceive pro wrestling and combat sports to be. So, with that being said, as a fan of pro wrestling, what was your kind of golden era of your fandom?
Oh man, I mean, I grew up in the middle of the Attitude Era, man. So it's hard for me to not say the Attitude Era. I was, I was in my early teens when Austin won the title at WrestleMania 14. The whole Undertaker Kane storyline, like WrestleMania 14, was like the definitely the apex for me. I remember in my childhood, everything leading up to WrestleMania 14, and then everything that came out of WrestleMania 14, like that to me was like, that's the centerpiece of my pro wrestling fandom. Like that's when I was all in on it. I had watched it my whole life growing up to that point, and I still watch it today. But I would say it definitely peaked around that time. WrestleMania 14, WrestleMania 15, that year was like, that's when it was it for me.
Oh man, that was the first time that my mom allowed me to go to my friend's house, right?
Yeah.
The first time, right? And I remember like that friend, it was like 4 of us, and like his mom spent like, I mean, $20 back in what 96, 97 went a long way because she bought a soda, pizza, and like a Doritos
Yeah,
3D, right? A big old bag for like $20 and just let us watch the pay-per-view.
there
And
you go.
again, there's so
Yeah,
much attached to that one event.
yeah, man. That was the first time my parents allowed me to actually buy the pay-per-view. The rest of the time I would go over to my friends' houses and stuff and watch it there. But that was the first time they allowed me to buy the pay-per-view, host my friends at my house. We did pizza and soda and all that stuff. We made a good time out of it.
That is tremendous. So I gotta ask here, in terms of obviously there was many luminaries. That's one of the things about the Attitude Era, where every form, top to bottom, right, from the opening match to the main event, right,
Yeah.
there was storylines interwoven through it all, right? So I gotta ask, guy or girl, like, did you have your favorites, and who were they?
All-time favorite had to be The Undertaker. Huge Undertaker fan my entire childhood. You know, I just loved everything about that character, man. I really did. Stone Cold Steve Austin was huge during that era. Shawn Michaels was huge during that era. It was huge fans of those guys for a long time. On the women's side, man, Lita was my favorite. There was just late 90s, the girl with the tattoos, midriff showing with the baggy pants, just that was the look back then.
Mm-hmm.
And Lita just kind of embodied that, and just a hell of a performer too, man. She's going in there just doing things that some of these guys are pulling off, and that was amazing to watch back then. My brother during that same era, he was big on the Hardy Boys too, so it's like, Team Extreme, we're all about it. So many great superstars out of that era, man. But those are definitely some of the ones that stick out.
I love it. Which, I mean, you had a brother. I had a sister, right? So, and
I have one
it's what.
sister and 4 brothers. I'm actually the
Oh,
oldest.
oh, damn, a big family. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So me and my sister, it was just the two, right?
Okay.
And I was the older one, and my era was was anything that the Hearts were on top. I mean, my son, his name is Owen because of the Hearts. And again, with all the people that are like, oh, wrestling is this and that, I won't dare say the F word, right? But the thing about it is, you look at the Hearts and like, that's it. My kind of ushering into what MMA and UFC and all that was because Dan Severn came to the WWF with 3 belts that were not WWF belts, right?
Yeah.
And he basically ragdolled Owen Hart. And again, everything that I knew, right? Stu Hart would wrestle everybody, every athlete, and stretch him, even put to sleep a wrestling bear, right?
Yeah.
All of his sons were wrestlers, all of the girls married wrestlers, right? And again, Brett was the champion, but even Brett would tell you Owen was the best. So when Dan Severn came and ragdolled Owen, again, everything that I knew about the world, it changed. It changed.
Yeah, man. You know what? It's funny you mentioned that because I didn't start watching the UFC at UFC 1. I don't think I had any knowledge of the UFC or mixed martial arts until guys like Dan Severn and Ken Shamrock showed up in WWE.
Mm-hmm.
And then they started talking about what these guys do. And then you start looking into it and you realize there's this whole other world that completely turns everything you think you know about combat sports at the time upside down. Mm-hmm. That might have been my first exposure to mixed martial arts was when Dan Severn and Ken Shamrock showed up in WWE. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny because you look at all facets of sport, right? All facets of entertainment. Everybody that has been able to apply a little bit of at least the methodology of pro wrestling, right? They've had success in their careers. Cassius Clay grew up idolizing Gorgeous George and Freddie Blassie. Comes on Muhammad Ali, one of the greatest talkers ever in any sport, right? Yeah. You see Richard Sherman. I was so pissed when the Seahawks and the Niners, because I was born in San Francisco, right? And Richard Sherman would cut pro wrestling promos on my team. I'm like, the hell? And now he's a Niner, so once you know who won the pony. But I mean, there's a reason Conor McGregor is doing Ric Flair with his, like everybody that isn't. I mean, we just got out of 4 years, regardless of how people's personal feelings and whatever. But we had a sitting president that was in the WWE Hall of Fame first.
Yeah, man.
That's facts.
That was crazy, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
especially in other sports outside of WWE, the leagues that you're in seem to want everybody to kind of be the same. But the ones who figure out how to stand out, for better or for worse, are the ones who end up becoming the superstars, right? So even before Conor McGregor, Chael Sonnen, who didn't always have the best record in the UFC and in mixed martial arts, and didn't always perform to the best of his ability, but a hell of a fighter, hell of a competitor, great dude. But once he learned how to cut promo and he started talking himself into bigger and bigger fights, man, I think a lot of these guys really stood up and took notice. I think guys like Chael Sonnen were also part of that catalyst for Conor McGregor, and then he just took it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, and look at this, right? Where if you get blackballed by the UFC, right, especially one Dana White, it can be the scarlet letter, right? That is fact, right? But this is a guy, right, who can do Bellator, can do UFC, can do ESPN, all in the same week. Like, that is huge. That's huge.
Yeah, man. It's crazy. I wish, the only thing about that though is I wish these guys would try to do it their own way. Because you can have a personality and you can sell a fight and kind of promo, for lack of a better word, without always being a douchebag. Everyone thinks that they have to be an asshole to get their point across. Everyone wants to be Connor. They want to be the Diaz brothers, or they want to be, all the other guys that try to just, they want to be the baddest thing on the planet. But some of my favorite guys to watch right now are the guys who can talk, but they are authentically themselves. Guys like Dustin Poirier, for example, who just won big over Conor McGregor. I love Dustin Poirier as a fighter. I think he's a fantastic human being. I think all the stuff he does with his charity work and how he raises his family is fantastic. But then you hear the guy talk. He doesn't have to pretend to be anybody else but Dustin Poirier, but you could just feel the passion coming out of that guy when he speaks. He's authentically himself at all times. And I just wish more of these guys would figure out, like, you don't have to pretend to be this character. You can be a little bit over the top and let that ego kind of jump out of you a little bit. But people want to know the real you, and they want to see the real you, because if you're going to put this front up all the time and then the real you comes out in the fight and it's not the same thing that you're displaying on camera, people are going to out you for that real quick, man.
Oh, especially in this day and age, man. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, social media is relentless. And I shared my fair share of Nate Williams memes. It's there. But, I hate bringing up this particular scenario because it's the person that I'm going to bring up. It's infamous and for good reason. But I will say this, right? Paul Heyman of ECW. There's a reason why he's still in the WWE as a writer, attached to the top guy in Roman Reigns till this day, decades after ECW folded, right? Yeah. I remember, I can't remember where it was, but Heyman talking about the horrific person, but at the time, Chris Benoit, right? And they were trying to get, when Benoit was in ECW, they were trying to get a promo. They had already wrestled the whole day, and all of that jazz, right? And they were trying to get a good promo. This was at 3:00 in the morning in Philadelphia, and for 6 hours they couldn't get a promo out of Benoit, right? But he's the crippler. He's the Canadian crippler, which that was a eerie foreboding, but I digress. But Paul Heyman went into his bathroom, medicine cabinet, and he saw Benoit fiddling with his hands, right? It's like, you're the crippler, whatever. He grabs out of his medicine cabinet some baby powder, right? Baby powder. And again, instead of forming it in his mom's basement, in Paul Heyman's mom's basement, right? They went outside where it's pitch black, and all you see is Benoit. Doesn't matter what he says. The visual you at home was Benoit like this, and smoke is coming out of his hands. Dust is
Yeah.
flying, right? And
Yeah.
that is a very good, most people think of the pageantry of professional wrestling as the main takeaway, right? But the thing about it is, it's you to 10, right? Dwayne Johnson, of course, his grandfather, his father were wrestlers themselves, part of one of the most historical, especially as somebody that is half Melanesian, right? The Samoan, I'm Fijian, he's Samoan, kind of the same genealogy, but he turned his whatever he was doing to 10, and is something that he is still continuing to do till this day as arguably the biggest star in Hollywood.
hmm Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why The Rock still has that connection to his fans. You see it all over social media. You see it in the videos that he posts when he gets to meet people. You know, it's either he's just put this character on so much and so well over the years that that's just who he is now, or this is just who he's always been. And fans, for whatever, for that same reason, are gravitating towards that man. They just see that authenticity of this guy, and he understands that he's in the position that he's in because of the fans that have supported him over the years too. So there's that give and take between him and the fans that allowed him to build up to the level that he's at. Man, I think he did it the best. Obviously, he's in the position he's in because he did it better than anybody. So I think that was great.
No, 100%. And in regards to Dustin Poirier, my sketchy artist says he's both fighter and then more than that. 100%.
Yeah, man. Guys like, if the sport had more guys like Dustin Poirier, Max Holloway, Randy Couture was the same way. Randy didn't have to get promo, but Randy was his authentic, genuine self, and would talk about, his approach and the cerebral approach that he had to the sport, and people ate that stuff up, man. Guys like that who can be true to themselves, but then use that to sell what they're doing to the fans, and the fans connect with it. That's where the magic happens, man.
Absolutely. So obviously, Gil, there have been a litany of people that have not just got you ready for your fights, not just got you ready for Josh Barnett's Bloodsport 4 this Saturday. But I mean, personally and professionally, there's been a lot of people that have helped mold you, not just as a fighter, but as a man. So go ahead and get some shout outs out of the way, my man. Take as long as you like.
You know what, man? I've had the good fortune to be around so many great people that have been very, very huge in just my development as an athlete, as a coach, as a person. Dude, that list is just extremely long, and there's no way I would be able to do it justice without missing somebody. The ones that definitely stand out, my parents are huge. My parents haven't always enjoyed everything that I do. They don't always think that everything I do is a great decision. But when they understand that this is what I want to do and I'm passionate about it, they see I'm going to go at it with everything that I got. They're behind me 100%. My mom hates watching me fight, but she's usually the loudest one in the crowd. I definitely I got to give big thank you to my wife, who has stuck with me since we were 16 years old, even when I wasn't worth sticking around for. She married me. She gave me two beautiful children who are they're my fire, man. They're my why. I love my babies more than anything. My high school wrestling coach and his wife, Don Stevens and Shirley Stevens, who are coaching over in Kentucky now at a university. They were huge in getting me and giving me the mental tools that I still possess and I still use today to do the sport. Guys like Randy Couture for being the inspiration that he is and opening up the facility he did. My man, Eric Nixick, who's running the gym now, was just named Coach of the Year from MMA Junkie for 2020. All my teammates, all my training partners, my coach, Ron Frazier, who's been stuck with me for 13 years now. I mean, there's way too many names. There's no way that I do it another hour just talking about people who have influenced my life in some positive way, man. I am the accumulation of all of these efforts from all these different people, man. I stand on the shoulders of all of them, and I'm grateful for every single one of them.
Well, again, you're proof positive that all of their efforts, all of their love, their care, consideration has been done right. So absolutely, my man. So for those that are kind of on the fence about purchasing Bloodsport 4, GCW, in conjunction with the War Master, Josh Barnett's Bloodsport 4. What would you like to tell them about purchasing this event and what they're going to see out of Coach Gil?
Anyone who's ever seen me compete knows what I bring to the table. I don't define myself by my wins and losses. I have losses in my record. I'm aware of that. But every time I show up to fight. I show up to perform. I show up to give every single thing that I have in my body until I got nothing left to give. My professional record is proof of that. Win or loss, my fights don't go to decisions. My fights end, and they usually end violently. If you want to see some good action this Saturday, you should definitely tune into Bloodsport.
Damn right. Man, I'm sold. Take my money. It's already there. Yep, Josh has got it. He's a friend, but he's already got my money. Every time I see Bloodsport, I'm already in. So I cannot wait. But as you march into the arena that is Josh Barnett's Bloodsport 4, people who want to see your walk and your journey as you head into the Ropeless ring, where can they find you, Coach Gil, on social media?
You can find me on social media. Most of my handles are just my first and last name, Gil Guardado or Gil_Guardado. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook. I just created a TikTok. There's nothing on there yet, but I'm going to try to do something with that. You can find me on YouTube, Coach Gil Strength and Conditioning. I'm everywhere, man. I'm easy to find. Look up my name. I don't go by any nicknames or anything like that. I want people to be able to find me. Feel free to connect with me, message me, all that good stuff. I'm usually going to reply to everybody as long as everybody's friendly and sociable and all that good stuff. I'm usually willing to talk to everyone, answer questions, whether it's fighting or pro wrestling or strength and conditioning, or if you just want to say, hey, how you doing? Or say, hey, good luck. I mean, please, man, I'm open to everybody. Easy to find.
Absolutely. I mean, he did exactly that when this guy asked him to be on this podcast. So again, I cannot thank you, Coach Gil, enough for this. And I cannot wait. Saturday, February 13th, Josh Barnett's Bloodsport 4. This is going to be live. Go ahead and check out Josh Barnett's website for not just the streams of both Bloodsport 4 and 5 on consecutive Saturday evenings, but also some sick merch. So you want to go ahead and check out Josh Barnett's website for that. Gil, I can't thank you enough for joining us here at According to Woods, and we can't thank you enough for watching us here at According to Woods. And if you haven't already done so, while you're going ahead and purchasing Bloodsport, again, you can thank us later. You also want to go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to the According to Woods podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And I mean, geez, don't take my word for it. Coach Gil, you're subscribed, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Actually, you know what? Matter of fact, let me double check that right now. Bam. Subscribe. Look at that.
Bang. So again, he's heading into Bloodsport 4, but before he got his ish together and subscribe, do like Coach Gil. Go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to the According to Woods podcast. But if you don't believe me, Coach Gil, here's another pro wrestler and MMA fighter, Zeta Zhang.
Hey, this is Zeta Zhang. Make